Having Your Cake by Quill. Twilight Sparkle has seen many interesting days in her vivid life as a pony of Equestria. From her beginnings as a mere student of Princess Celestia and besting Nightmare Moon, to the terrors of T-Rex Rampage, she has dealt with a fair many foes. Needless to say, she's made out her own life as well, and successfully so. How many can say they've gone from student to full-time princess of friendship in a span of a few years? What stood out most to the Alicorn was the long list of friends she'd made in that short span. Where she once stood alone, she now had an entire support network made of many ponies of all kinds, most certainly her fellow elements of harmony. If you'd told her all those years ago that she would have the strong bonds they shared now, Twilight would have little room to believe it with her social anxiety and nervousness around others. Yet, here she stood. Only now, she found herself in a slight puzzle of confusion. You see, today was a very special day for the Violet Alicorn. Today marked the anniversary of her birth. A day that certainly had not gone unnoticed by her family and friends. Pinkie Pie, ever the party lover, had arranged a grand gathering for all to come and celebrate her special day. Every pony from all parts of Equestria attended, faces new and old. Twilight could have even sworn she greeted and re-shook hooves with the entire Apple clan. Twice. And of course, there had been gifts abound. Almost comically, she had counted over half of them being books ranging to all sorts of subjects. One might suspect it was a poor joke on Twilight's love of literature, but in reality, she was very grateful. The new library within her crystal castle was in much need of occupancy, and many of the tomes she'd been given would do great for it. Yet, one gift seemed to be missing, as well as one certain Sunpony. Twilight had been very cautious not to pay too much heed to her observation of the missing mare, chalking up the first idea of her being delayed and preventing her from attending straight away. But the entire party was without the presence of one beautiful, glorious Alicorn. And though hiding behind the party confetti and constant cheers of her birthday was easy, it was harder to deny the sadness of being denied a birthday wish from her mare friend. Of all the ponies she'd want to hear it from, she'd want to hear it most from that warm, regal voice, and see the affection in those amethyst eyes. Alas, that voice and those eyes never came. Twilight closed out the party with a thank you to every pony before heading to her private chambers inside the castle. For the entire trot up the many castle stairs, her thoughts broached every possibility why her mare friend wasn't there. It was true, they kept the relationship out of the public eye for the most part. Only their closest friends knew of their relationship, and they'd given their blessings when they saw how happy they were together. But did she choose not to arrive for fear of exposing themselves somehow? This had brought her into her room, mind still fuddled with thoughts of where her dearest pony had gone, only to bump her head against something soft, cool, and slightly damp. Twilight had to blink when she gazed upon the impressive-looking cake standing before her. It was one that would have made Pinkie Pie certainly drool. 3 layers of white icing and cake that appeared to be decorated with multiple colors that circled the top 2 rings of the cake in a flourish of color. A small smile graced Twilight's muzzle. The colors of the decorative lining around the cake reminded her of the wavy, ethereal mane and tail of her mare friend.
Well, as many often say, drown your sorrows in cake.
Twilight spoke aloud to herself, her voice carrying a small echo in the spacious room. Giving the cake another look over, she saw no note to mark whom it was from. She was tempted to question how such a massive cake was allowed past the guards, and she wasn't told. However, with it being her birthday and trusting that the guards would check for any malicious elements, it could be safely assumed that this was no impending disaster cake. Plucking a strawberry that was one of several perched around the cake, She dragged it along the thick icing and multicolored decoration she presumed was also icing. However, when she dragged it up to her lips for a bite, she blinked as she chewed on the strawberry morsel. The ethereal-colored icing had not shifted or followed along the trail she'd made. Tilting her head in confusion, Twilight dragged another strawberry using her magic this time. The blue and green hues only shifted as she parted between them with the fruit, as a boat would through water.
That's odd,
Twilight murmured as she trotted about the cake, following the trail of colors.
Isn't the point of a cake to be entirely edible?
Her curiosity was primed once more when she saw the trail lead into the cake itself. She debated simply using her magic to part the cake open, scientific exploration taking charge to debunk the mystery before her. However, with the lingering taste of cake and strawberry on her tongue, she chose another course instead. Plucking another strawberry up, she began to slowly dig into the cake where the curious trail led, dabbing away at icing and bits of cake and licking them off the strawberry with ease. She had to admit, the chef who designed this dessert deserved an award. Yet, it wasn't long until she came across a new curiosity. Whereas one can only dig so far into a cake before finding a new layer of coloring or the basic cake itself, she had instead covered a broad expanse of white that lay beneath the deceiving layer of icing and sweetness. A stroke of the strawberry across it drew forth no addition, but she could have sworn she heard a small gasp from somewhere in the room. But she was alone, so how?
I wonder,
Twilight hummed aloud before digging into more of the cake near that curious white expanse. A gentle brush with her bare hoof betrayed a surface that was immensely soft and wet, no doubt due to being underneath the cake's layer for so long. Yet it did not give way to her motion, instead jiggling lightly when she poked it. The prod drew out another small gasp, and Twilight paused to look the cake over again. She could see now that the curious trail of colors that made up the border of the cake led to that white expanse. And if her eyes did not deceive her, it gave a small twitch when she rubbed her hoof near what she presumed was the end of the trail. Only a few seconds passed as she evaluated her evidence before coming to a conclusion.
My, what an interesting cake this is,
she declared. Hearing herself echo, she took it down a notch before continuing. Grinning, she left the strawberry to rest aside for now.
But that's enough strawberry for now. I think I prefer just the cake itself.
And with that, dug into eating the cake. Her pace was slow enough that she didn't rush, but bite by bite, more of the white expanse was revealed underneath the icing. Twilight's eyes lit up as she began to notice a small slip of pink just below where she'd uncovered, and brought her muzzle over to dig into it. The first press of her muzzle against it drew forth a low-sounding moan from within the cake, but Twilight pressed on. The violet-maned mare's tongue dabbed and licked away, more and more of the pink slip being visible. She also noticed an increase in the wetness of the cake compared to its outermost layers. Yet, it added a tangible taste that only made her crave more. She hummed lowly as she sighed out onto the pinkness before her, and smirked as she saw it twitch in response. Flapping her wings lightly to lift herself up, Twilight's head craned down and began to lick in earnest as she assaulted the new curious find. An amalgam of tastes came into her mind, mixing bananas and cream with the cake's unique flavoring to form what she knew was a delicious treat. She pressed on, tongue flicking left and right to loosen the cake crumbs away that clung to the edges. By now, she could hear a repetitive moan reaching her ears, coming from within the cake. It became especially pronounced when Twilight's nimble tongue brushed against a small nub she saw poking out near the bottom of the pink expanse.
She could never resist a good cake when she saw one,
Twilight thought to herself before a devious thought came to mind. Her horn coming alight, another strawberry levitated up beside her before it stroked across an untouched portion of the now slightly shaking cake. Twilight gave no heed to the shaking, instead settling for taking the cake-coated strawberry and pressing it against the now throbbing nub. At the same instant she did this, her muzzle was planted directly into the pink slit she'd been licking before. The white expanse on either side of her was as soft as she remembered, brushing against her cheeks as she licked and delved deeper in. Whispers could be heard from within the room now, emanating from the still unseen mare within the cake. Yet Twilight's efforts were certainly having an effect, her muzzle growing damp as specks of juices began to drip onto her tongue and nose. This only encouraged her efforts as she drew up another strawberry to reapply the cake, but this time swapping places with it to assault the pink nub while she shoved the cake-coated strawberry into the now dripping depths before her. She expected a different response when she clamped her lips down on the nub and sucked, instantly forcing the strawberry treat into the depths with her magic. A cry emanated through the room as the cake suddenly seemed to come alive, bursting before Twilight's eyes. Grand white wings, stained with cake and frosting, extended and flapped once before remaining rigid and spread wide. The multicolored border of the cake shimmered and whipped about her face, a soft touch that only made Twilight moan around the nub she continued to suck upon, feeling her juices rain down onto her from the squirting, winking slit before her only enticed her to up her action, drawing more of the lustful yelling out from the mare now pulling her head out from the cake.
Twilight!
Celestia's voice cried out finally before her body gave way and made Twilight step back as she fell to the floor, covered amidst a mess of her own juices and the now equally messy cake. The once regal, now panting royal matriarch looked up to Twilight with a loving gaze in her bright amethyst eyes.
That was unfair.
She tried to look ruffled, but only succeeded in making her lover giggle as she rubbed a hoof across her muzzle.
Hardly unfair compared to you missing out on the celebrations, but this makes up for it,
Twilight said, coming around to her front before kissing her on the lips warmly, the princess returning her affections with a small hum of satisfaction as she tasted herself and the ever-delicious cake on her fellow mare's lips.
I hope you soundproof the room.
The question made Celestia blink as she looked to her partner.
Of course. But what?
Celestia was cut off as she felt a small nudge pressing against her still sensitive slit. Her eyes cast down to her flank, where she could see a purple-hued strawberry, coated in cake frosting, hovering near her nethers.
I'm not done eating my cake yet,
was all of Twilight's reply before she claimed Celestia's lips once more, the pair falling to the floor amidst the now collapsed cake.